Ash Browne joins us also in the studio, the editor of the Football Record, to do, Gerard, a deep dive.
A deep dive. I love a deep dive, and I love somebody that is not prepared to con the public. He's brought in his Hawthorn scarf and his Hawthorn beanie because, like a lot of Hawthorn players, supporters, they're already ready for September.
Well, Gerard, Hawks this year are primetime Hawks.
They're the big winners.
They're the big winners. Hello, Ash.
Good to be here, boys. Yeah, the Hawk fans drink a lot of coffee on game day now. All these night games. It's not quite used to. Instead of knock off early, it's how we stay awake all day for.
This has turned around quickly. I mean, they couldn't be hidden more on the Sunday 1 p.m. game for about 3 years in a row.
They were the 110 specialists. I think they had last year, before the finals, they might have been Channel 7 games 2 or 3 times for the whole year. They were Fox every week. Now they're the darlings, and let's put up or shut up time for them. They've got to perform because we've seen over the years, Whitey, we've seen the AFL back in Essendon every year for some reason. Essendon's getting as much high-profile footy this year as Hawthorn without
Do we know why?
About it.
They just must have a crowd that turns up every time.
Yeah, I think people watch them. I mean, there's obviously a lot of data and analytics go behind the scheduling as well, and people watch Essendon.
People watch Essendon for them to win, but there's quite a few people that like watching Essendon to lose.
Nasty pasty.
That's true. But I mean, they've backed St Kilda over the years. I mean, let down. They've backed Carlton in over the years.
That was a disaster, the Carlton scenario.
They did that for years. So it's Hawthorn's turn now. It doesn't always work out, and but they've got they've got the get out clause from round 16, where if they're not performing, they can shut them back to where they've been for a long time, which is 110 Sunday.
Are you happy enough with the opening round again?
I like opening round.
Yep.
I mean, having worked in footy for a long time and spoken to clubs, I mean, I used to have conversations with a lot of people, people like Greg Swan and others who are working up there for a long time, just bemoaning the fact that the NRL got such a large head start on the AFL. So I'm a massive fan of opening round. It makes it a very long season, but I think it's got to be done because otherwise they're giving the rugby league and rugby, which is also started by then, too big a head start. You need what they call content. It's not a great word people like to use, but at the end of the day, the games are content and you need them early up in Northern Australia. So I'm a very, very big fan of it. And as a fan, it's another weekend of live footy to watch on the telly.
So the Pies are going up to play the Giants in the opening round out at Giants Stadium. Let's hope it's full.
Well, I think it's Labor Day weekend, so Collingwood fans will travel. Interesting with the Giants. I know it's a subject that's dear to your heart at the moment, Gerard. We'll talk a bit.
Not so much the Giants, but those under the situation surrounding the reason for the Giants.
That's been I've really enjoyed your content that last couple of days. But the Giants put out all the clubs do their fixture reveals, and the Giants had a song called "We Only Work Weekends" because to go with their fixture release because they don't play.
No Thursday Fridays.
No Thursday Fridays for the Giants, but they'll maximise the weekend slots where they can. So I think that's a great fixture. I'm surprised there's no night game on the Saturday or the Sunday. There's a Saturday afternoon and there's only 4 games. It's
opening round.
Yeah, opening round. So
right.
no Saturday night footy.
Okay.
They're playing that as a twilight game at NG Stadium. They get 2 games in there, the Giants, before they have to hand it over to the livestock.
Yeah, that's right.
The livestock, I like it. Yeah, that's not bad.
Exactly. So I'm interested as to why, and I know we have spoken to the fixture boss earlier in the program, why can't opening round just be round 1?
Well, there is that. I think they like round 1 to be when all 18 teams are playing.
Has it got anything to do with Richmond and Carlton having some sort of mortgage over round 1?
It could well be. And all the history books, Richmond have won 16 of the round 1 clashes against Carlton.
It just seems farcical that opening round's not round 1.
Yes, it's a double opening round, which is fantastic, or a double round 1.
1 and 1A, maybe.
I was up in the jungles of Java having a chat to the monkeys, and they're a big fan of Fireball Friday and Sports Day, and they were listening to Kane whack the Tigers' scheduling as the opening of the season. And, I thought he was being a bit mischievous in that it's not really the opening of the season, but it is the opening of round 1.
Well,
so
it's the opening of the season in Victoria.
Yeah, that's a fair, easy way of putting it. Are you on board there? Because I don't mind the tradition of it. I think it's you're going to get a great crowd. So I'm actually with the opening round.
The season goes. I mean, you include opening round. The season goes for 25 weeks.
Yeah.
It's a long, long time. So they've got to. They can't just. They've got to wheel out. They've got to have some traditional fixtures. I've got no problem with Richmond Carlton. The anticipation's always great. There's not a lot of primetime love for Richmond this year. I think they've got Anzac Eve, and they've got the Dreamtime game.
Yeah,
and that's
Friday night now.
Their media release was, I think they cut and paste Hawthorn's old media releases. Family friendly 1 10 p.m. time slot. So they've taken a leaf out of what Hawthorn used to put in.
Okay.
So they've been relegated. Even Hawthorn are playing Richmond for their 100th anniversary game.
Yep.
Which you'd think would be a Friday night, but Richmond are going so poorly, they've actually said to Hawthorn, sorry, it's a big deal, but you got to play it on Sunday because we want to minimise the Tigers on a Friday night.
So the Super Saturday, how does the scheduling look for the clubs and for Fox, who have got it as his big game?
I made some notes. So some of the matchups for Twilight Footy this year, which is Saturday Twilight, we've got
one of my favourite schedules.
It's a brilliant schedule. The grand final replay is round 1, Sydney-Brisbane at the SCG.
Right.
And that's in that 8 weeks where all games are live on Fox and 7 can't show any, even on delay, I think. So this is a great outcome for Fox. This is what Fox have paid their money for.
Yep.
And they've got Adelaide, Carlton, they've got an Essendon, Sydney, they've got a Port v Geelong, Hawthorn v Brisbane, Essendon, Geelong, Port v Sydney are some of the Saturday Twilight games. So there's some really good footy there for...
Has Fox got a Richmond game early in the season?
I haven't drilled down that much. Why?
I'm just wondering when Dusty's going to be rolled out.
We can talk about Dusty's as an item for later on. Yeah, I'm sure they do. They've got a lot of... we said they've got these 110 Sunday games, so they mentioned it might be that he'll say, I'll do it if Jack does it. So it'll be Jack Rewalt and Dustin Martin together calling the Richmond games, which would make for great TV. You'd watch the games irrespective of how competitive or not they are.
Maybe Hutchie needs to talk to Dusty about doing some Tiger Radio games or something
Tiger
like that.
Radio,
Tiger Radio. One thing that I find, just going through the highlights of the fixture where I think the AFL needs to look at it, so much of the good stuff happens in the first 8 weeks of the season. So, and you've got Gather Round, you've got the Easter weekend round of matches, the Anzac Day weekend. It all happens early where games are played over all sorts of different days of the week, and it's really exciting. But then when you sort of get into the heavy weeks and months of the season, there's not necessarily that round to really look forward to, that blockbuster feel.
Yeah, but you never know that because you're assessing it on last year's results. And they could, who was to think Hawthorn were going to rapidly change the way they have?
No, I understand that. I'm more talking from a themed point of view of you've got your Easter round, you've got your Anzac round, you've got your Gather round. Dreamtime's in the middle of the year, but in the second half of the year...
That's 2 rounds now.
I love a little bit of no-themed round. Just a little bit of straight footy.
The round they've dropped, Easter, which people love, was rivalry round. Which the sort of Fox Footy have picked up a little bit as a marketing theme for...
Well, they started it, to be honest.
But it used to be an official AFL round at one stage, rivalry round. And that's one the AFL's dropped, and that could be one they could put on the middle of the year. But then by the middle of the year, you've got all the bye weeks.
Yeah.
So you've got all teams taking 1 week off over 3 or 4 weeks. So you can't play a big themed round in a week when not everyone's playing.
The other interesting thing from my point of view also, when you look at the fixture, is there are 3 teams that are celebrating their 100th year because, of course, it's 1925. 3 teams came into the competition.
Then we got the Dogs.
The Dogs are in round 2 against Collingwood.
Yeah.
Hawthorn, as we said, round 8 against Richmond. North are waiting until round 20.
Are they?
They're playing Geelong.
They're playing that in Melbourne?
They're playing that in Melbourne.
Okay, I thought they might be in another country somewhere. Reading a column I read today.
Speaking of North, that their Bunbury game will be a Channel 7 game. So the Channel 7 team will be getting on the... Apparently they've now got direct flights. You know this, Gerard, to Busselton.
Yeah, they do. It's actually a really good flight. It's a great football area. And Margaret River's about an hour and a half away, so it's a win-win. Can
you join
I got my hand up. SEN going.
Tell Hutchie you want to go over for the week.
Yeah.
So that's... but round 20 is a long time to wait for North. I mean, maybe it gives them something to look forward to if it's another bleak season. But
I noticed there's no Wednesday night games, and I think that was only due to the success of Lawnography. They've just had to schedule away from it.
It was Lawnography, by the way.
Don't ask.
There's only one word to describe Lawnography, and that was overwhelming.
Overwhelming. Jesus, we've had multinational companies. Hutchie's been dealing with them all this year today.
Phone rang hot this morning. Wednesday night's a product of having Anzac Day on a Thursday, which Anzac Days, I think, are Friday, so the Richmond Melbourne's a standard Thursday.
What about the Saints? How are the mighty Saints looking?
They play Carlton on a Friday night for their annual MCG game.
Yeah.
Apparently, the talkback this morning, Dwayne Dwayne's show was turned over to St Kilda supporters complaining about the draw. I think they've got 3 trips to Adelaide in the first 5 games. They've got Adelaide and Port away, then gather round. So they'll play more games in Adelaide than they will in Victoria for the first few weeks of the season. But they're not. I mean,
is that an oversight? Because that isn't. I mean, irrespective, I'm not a St Kilda fan, but I don't think that's overly fair because you've got to build your season up early in the year to get your fans on board and get them going. If they're spending more time in Adelaide than they are in Melbourne through the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, I don't think that's particularly fair.
Yeah,
well, it does highlight the point that Chris Scott made and a number of others. I think Lee Matthews was on board here. The gather round's fantastic, but it is a major advantage to the 2 local teams. They get an extra home game.
Yeah, they do. So the WA team's getting their advantage now with North coming over and playing there. But I think it does give an advantage to the Adelaide teams. It's hard, isn't it? I think they play Port away, Adelaide away, and they play the Giants and gather round. It could be a tough start to the season, Saints. And they've played 3 in South Australia. They've got to try and build some excitement when they finally sort of get back to Victoria.
The Saints fans have got to take note from their coach. Anytime, anywhere.
All coaches say that.
Anytime. No, Ross was the first. He was the one strongest with that message.
Which club was he coaching?
I think he was with Fremantle, to be honest.
I think he might have been too.
Yeah, and he's been, I think, very strong in that area, and it probably won him a few games because of the psychological attitude towards it. And Adam Kingsley's exactly the same with the Giants, and they need to be able to play anywhere, anytime because they get shoved around everywhere.
Well, they actually go on the road for about 6-7 weeks while the show's on. And if you look at their form over the time, they drop 1 or 2 games towards the end of that would look on paper to be winnable games. But even though Canberra's technically a home game for them, they're still travelling. I think they get 1 game in Sydney as an away. They play the Swans at the SCG in that time, but otherwise they're travelling every week, and it does catch up with them. So, and we talk about. It's not really a draw, it's a fixture, it's really a schedule. It catches up with the Giants at some stage. I reckon it's really hard for them to get a top 2 finish because they drop a couple of games in that sort of long travel that catches up at the end of the year.
Where do you expect the Giants to finish this year, given they've lost a little bit of their depth? Well, not a little bit, a few.
I think they're a top 6 team.
Top 6?
Straight away, and then see how it goes from there. But there's a lot of talent, and I think they're very well coached. But psychologically, how they went after losing those 2 finals, that's just along with the Swans with the baggage from the grand final. That's what you want to. Where there's any sort of
what's got more baggage, the Swans and their grand final demise, or going out in straight sets after having both games seemingly won?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question. I think the Swans are in a difficult place to come back from.
It'll be an interesting watch the Swans this year.
But again, let's get to September. I mean, they'll win 17 games. They're that good. They play really well at home. Then we'll get to September and we'll see.
Yeah, history says that winning 17 games post a grand final is not easy. Last 3 premiers have all missed the finals.
Yes.
It's the teams that hit the ground running. Well, they do. I mean, that's the reality is that the teams that get the fast start. So it's to your point. You think of Collingwood from last year. They started the year slowly. They were always playing catch up because they had less time to prepare, and they talked about going into the season a little bit soft, as Matthew Knights used to say, a bit doughy, because they started so much later than everybody else.
Every team, but in a 25-week season, every team is going to have a slump.
That's right.
And it's when your slump happens and how you manage it and how you come out of the other side that's going to tell the story of the season. I mean, Hawthorn's was early, and then they were flying. They did have a slump. They lost their first.
I remember during the year I was looking at a press conference with Chris Scott after he'd lost maybe his 3rd game in 4 or 5 weeks, and he was cool, calm, and collected. And I thought to myself, this is either an act or he understands it's such a long season. They're okay. They'll come out of this. And sure enough, they came out of it. I spoke to him about it at the Waitley 50th the other day. And he said, well, I was pretty confident we'd have the team. And sure enough, they were 1 kick away from probably winning the flag.
I think if you analyse his press conferences after, I think there was perhaps 1 loss where he was actually disappointed, where I think there was a level of concern, but otherwise it was very Chris Scott like, no, we're okay, these things happen. It's as you say, a long season.
I know that the fixture only just dropped today, but have you sort of done a a weighting scale on who's had the easy one and who's had the hard one?
No, not really. But a lot of talk around Carlton. They've got a very who do you get twice? And straight away, Carlton have got West Coast twice and Richmond twice, and early. Apparently, in the first 14 weeks, they've got them both twice. I mean, I don't know for sure, but without having it in front of me. But Carlton, from all reports, should make top 4.
Should make top 4.
Someone said, Carlton, top 4
Finn
for sure.
O'Sullivan's a good player.
Yeah, Carlton's apparently is pretty good, but that's only from without having studied team by team, gone through it.
So when you look through the I guess the ladder from last year, okay, North Melbourne, West Coast, and Richmond might be the 3 teams you want twice, but outside of that, this is where I think it's almost impossible to judge who has a good fixture and who has a bad fixture, or a tough one or an easy one, because the depth is such that, Adelaide and Melbourne, who are sort of right down near the ladder, I'm not sure you really want to play them, particularly Adelaide at home.
No, if you get Adelaide twice, I mean, they're technically a bottom 6 team. Well, they finished 15th or bottom 4.
That's right, but
they're not a bottom 4 side, really. And look at who's coming into their side. They'll be better. So if you're drawing Adelaide twice as your bottom 6 team, might actually be the Hawks.
You've been shafted.
Yeah.
Robbo thinks the Saints have been shafted on the fixture and Bassett should be filthy. Or maybe Bassett's just been given a little bit of a
AFL payback.
A bit of a payback after the socking he did all
you know what
last
happened,
year.
Jared? He got ahead of himself.
Oh, did he?
I always thought what happens at the Bassett family, extended family gatherings with Andrew bleating to Commissioner Brother Paul about various going on and various ills at the AFL.
I'm just trying to scroll down to see who the Herald Sun have the big winners and the big losers. And no, they haven't got it.
One thing that would have definitely happened is that all clubs would have welcomed the fixture.
Of course they welcomed the fixture.
They welcomed the fixture.